Have you ever just like stared at the sheer number of new game releases and thought, how? How do I even know which one's actually worth playing?
Oh, absolutely. It's a flood, isn't it? Especially these days.
Right. And sometimes a game just kind of pops up, doesn't quite fit the mold you expect from a studio.
Exactly. And that brings us neatly to what we're diving into today, a perfect example of that.
Yeah, we're talking about FBC Firebreak. The latest from Remedy Entertainment, it just dropped June 17th, 2025.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a curveball.
It really is. Instead of, their usual deep cinematic single-player stuff like Control or Alan Wake, this is a 3-player cooperative PvE shooter. First person.
Set right in the oldest house from Control. Very unexpected.
An interesting move for sure. So our goal here is to cut through the chatter. We've got reviews, player comments, industry takes, the works. We want to figure out what FBC Firebreak actually is.
How it stacks up, why people are talking about it, or maybe why they're not talking about it as much as you'd think.
And ultimately, what all this means for you if you're maybe sitting there wondering, should I give this a shot?
Let's get into it. So, okay, you're in the oldest house, paranormal first responder. What does that actually feel like? What are you doing moment to moment?
Well, the core identity is really that 3-player co-op PvE shooter experience. Player versus environment. Teamwork is supposedly key.
And they made it super easy to get into, right? Platform-wise.
Oh, yeah. Hugely accessible. It's on PS5, and notably it's on PS Plus, then Xbox Series X and S, obviously through Game Pass Day 1, and PC2, Steam, Epic, PC Game Pass.
So yeah, if you subscribe to basically anything, you probably have access, which is smart.
Definitely lowers the barrier to entry. Gameplay-wise, it's all built around these elemental tools and trying to get players to synergize.
Okay, tell me about the tools, the kits.
Right, there are 3 unique playable kits. You've got the Fix Kit, that's repair tools, turret support, sort of the engineer class.
Okay.
Then the Jump Kit. Think shock damage, better movement, traversal abilities, more agile.
Gotcha. And the third?
The Splash Kit. Crowd control, basically. Uses water-based abilities to slow enemies down, make them vulnerable.
Okay, 3 distinct roles. But how do they actually, work together? Is it just 3 people doing damage? Or is there more to it?
That's where they're pushing this elemental synergy system. It's not just parallel play. The idea is you actively combine things.
Like how? Give me an example.
Okay, so say the Splash Kit player soaks a group of enemies, makes them wet.
Right.
Then the Jump Kit player comes in, hits them with shock damage. Boom. Way more effective because they're wet.
Ah, I see. So water conducts electricity. Makes sense.
Exactly. Or maybe someone sets an enemy on fire, and that burning enemy can then spread the fire to others nearby. Chain reaction.
Okay, that sounds genuinely tactical. It forces you to actually communicate and coordinate, presumably.
That's the intent, definitely. It pushes for that kind of team play.
How are the missions built around this? What's the structure?
The main activities are called jobs. There are 5 different types of missions, apparently, and you can scale the difficulty. They call it clearance levels 1 through 3.
And they throw in modifiers too, right? To mix things up.
Yeah, corrupted items. These act as challenge modifiers. Could be like explosive hazards suddenly appearing, or maybe the enemy waves come much faster. Things to keep you on your toes.
And the environment plays a role too.
It does. You've got things like zip lines you can use, ammo stations, obviously, and even these fire suppression showers.
Which I guess you'd need if things are constantly catching fire.
Precisely. Helps manage the chaos. Now, one important technical point, full crossplay is in. PC, Xbox, PS5 can all play together.
Great, but
no cross-save. Your progress is locked to whatever platform you start on.
oof. Okay, that's a key thing to know if you hop between, say, PC and console.
Definitely a consideration. So, okay, how did it land? The reception.
Well, looking at the aggregate scores, it kind of sits in that mixed to positive zone. OpenCritic is around a 75 average. Steam reviews are hovering around 66% positive, which Steam calls mixed. Metacritic mostly echoes that.
So not a runaway smash hit, but not a disaster either. What were the critics liking?
The positives often mention the art direction and atmosphere. It definitely feels like Remedy, that weird, surreal, brutalist vibe from Control. That's there.
Yeah, they usually nail that.
And a really big one, highlighted almost everywhere. No monetization, no battle pass, no cosmetic shop, no FOMO, fear of missing out tactics.
Wow, in this day and age, that is notable.
It really stands out. Critics also said it genuinely encourages teamwork when it clicks. That synergy system seems to work for some.
Okay, but what about the downsides? What were the complaints?
Several common ones. The gunplay was often described as feeling a bit flat, Less punchy than you might expect from a shooter.
Okay. Weapon feel is important.
Yeah. Also, the early progression felt slow and maybe a bit underwhelming to some. Getting cooler abilities takes time.
Right, the hook needs to be strong early on.
The mission loop could also get repetitive after a while, according to some reviews. And a big practical issue. No built-in voice or text chat.
Ooh, in a co-op focused game.
Yeah.
That's a choice. Makes that coordination much harder if you're not already partied up with friends outside the game.
Exactly. And that lack of cross-save we mentioned kept coming up too.
So a mix of design and technical complaints. What about actual players? What's the word on the street, like on Reddit or Steam forums?
It's just as mixed, honestly. You see comments like one player calling it an excellent online co-op experience.
Right.
Approachable, no FOMO. Really positive.
Okay.
But then you get someone else slamming a core mechanic, saying something like, if the enemy is wet, they take damage. This mechanic sucks turbo ass. Pretty blunt.
Huh. Okay, yeah, it tells you exactly how they feel. Shows that synergy system isn't landing for everyone.
For sure. And you always get the funny ones, like someone joking the realistic fire effects made their cat unionized and calls the thermostat a climate denial machine.
Love it. Adds a bit of character to refute that.
But the general vibe from players seems to be, it's definitely better with friends. Playing solo is apparently less engaging. It often gets called a hidden gem on Game Pass or PS Plus.
So good value if it's free with your subscription, maybe less compelling as a full price purchase for some.
Seems that way. It has charm, especially co-op, but multiple sources mention the gameplay loop, and missions start to feel a bit samey after, say, 10 hours or so.
Okay, so it has a potentially limited shelf life for some players. Interesting.
Huh?
How does it fit then compared to other games? Let's start with remedies and stuff. Control.
Right. Visually, you see the DNA, that surreal, concrete-heavy, oldest house aesthetic is there.
Yeah.
But reviewers noted Firebreak seems scaled back. Fewer crazy particle effects, less environmental destruction, more functional than cinematic was a phrase I saw.
Which makes sense for a co-op shooter versus a narrative showcase like Control. What about gameplay differences?
Huge difference. Control had that amazing, fluid, telekinetic combat, throwing objects, levitating, plus a deep single-player story. Firebreak pairs that right down. That's co-op missions, specific class kits, much more limited powers.
And that's where the Remedy fanbase seems divided, right? This isn't the Control sequel some might have been expecting.
Exactly. It's a departure. Now, comparing it to other co-op shooters, let's take Deep Rock Galactic.
Okay, similar team size, mission structure.
Yeah, but Firebreak looks much more realistic, more polished graphically, compared to Deep Rock's stylized, low-poly look. Both push teamwork and have scaling difficulty. But Firebreak feels maybe more grounded, less inherently chaotic than Deep Rock can get.
Okay. What about something like Ubisoft's The Division? Another co-op shooter, but very different setting.
Totally different. The Division is urban, open-world, realistic gear. Firebreak is tight, indoor corridors mostly, with all the supernatural weirdness. And crucially, The Division is all about loot, stats, RPG progression. Firebreak is much simpler, class kits, no real loot grunt.
So, less focus on constant gear upgrades, more on using your kit's abilities.
Right. And one more comparison, GTFO. That's another co-op PvE shooter.
But GTFO is known for being brutally hard.
Right.
Very tense horror atmosphere.
Exactly. Firebreak seems way more accessible. Brighter, clearer art style, more forgiving gameplay, less punishing. GTFO is hardcore, stealth-focused, dark. Firebreak is more approachable, maybe more casual, friendly co-op.
So it's trying to carve out a space between the lighthearted chaos of Deep Rock and the hardcore tension of GTFO, but with a Remedy visual twist and simpler mechanics than The Division.
That seems like a good way to put it. Which brings us back to one of its most unusual features, that no microtransactions thing.
It's honestly kind of radical today. No battle pass, no premium currency, no cosmetic shop, nothing. You just play the game you bought or got with your subscription.
Players seem to really appreciate that. The whole no FOMO aspect gets a lot of praise. But let's play devil's advocate. Is this purely a pro-consumer choice? Or could it be a sign? Maybe the budget or the scope was smaller and they just didn't get around to building those systems. Is it principle or practicality?
That's a really sharp question, because while players say they hate microtransactions, the fact that Firebreak's reception is still mixed suggests that simply not having them isn't enough on its own to guarantee massive success or long-term engagement.
Right. The core game still needs to hold up entirely on its own merits.
And it tells you how much the landscape has shifted, that the absence of MTX is now a major talking point, almost an anomaly, instead of just being normal. It's a bold move by Remedy, but maybe highlights that the business model and the core gameplay loop are really intertwined in player perception now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And this ties into that division among Remedy fans we mentioned.
Definitely. Fans who love Remedy for Alan Wake, for Control, these deep, story-driven, single-player journeys. They look at Firebreak, this multiplayer PvE shooter with a pretty light narrative, and they're split.
There's a real debate in the community, like, is this still Remedy?
Because even though it's set in the Control universe, there aren't many big lore drops or familiar character cameos, apparently. It feels somewhat disconnected.
So fans are wondering, was it scaled back? Or was it always meant to be this more self-contained multiplayer experiment?
It shows how strongly tied a studio's identity can become to a specific genre or style, venturing outside that. Not all the existing fans might come along for the ride.
Another angle people are discussing, is Firebreak basically just Game Pass bait? Or maybe a test bed for Remedy's future multiplayer ambitions?
That's the subscription service question, isn't it? Is its main purpose to add value to Game Pass and PS Plus, make those subscriptions stickier?
Or is it a Remedy dipping their toes into multiplayer, maybe learning lessons for, say, Control 2's potential online modes? Or that other multiplayer project they have, Project Condor?
It could very well be both. It highlights how these mid-tier games, maybe not huge budget blockbusters, can serve as valuable content for subscription libraries. And for Remedy, it's perhaps a lower risk way to build multiplayer muscle.
Get that experience without betting the farm on a huge flagship title being multiplayer from the start.
Exactly. Develop expertise, test infrastructure, see what works. Smart, potentially.
But here's another oddity. It's been called the best game no one's streaming. Why is that? It looks decent, it's co-op, it's crossplay. Why isn't it catching on with streamers on Twitch or YouTube?
Sources suggest it just doesn't produce many viral moments. There aren't huge, spectacular boss fights reported or moments of hilarious emergent chaos like in some other co-op games. No mod support either, which often keeps games alive on stream.
So it's maybe more of a steady, workman-like co-op experience.
Seems like it. More of a chill co-op session with friends than a content machine that's exciting to watch for hours.
Then that distinction is huge now, isn't it? Fun to play versus fun to watch. They're not always the same thing.
Not at all. And watchability drives discoverability and longevity in the current market. If it's not getting streamed, fewer people find out about it.
Okay, but maybe there's a path forward. They released a patch pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
Patch 1.2.
Yeah, just days after launch, June 20th. And it addressed some key complaints.
How did it change?
Raised the starting clearance level to 3, which suggests maybe the early game felt too slow or unrewarding.
Ah, speeding up that initial progression.
Right. Streamlined some early stuff, fixed tutorials and UI elements based on feedback. They also separated loadout cosmetics from their function, a good quality of life change, and improved the ammo availability and those fire suppression tools.
So, hitting a lot of the points people are mentioning.
Yeah.
And the players who stuck around like these changes.
Yeah, reports say the patch was highly requested and well received by the remaining player base. It shows Remedy is listening and reacting quickly.
Which is great. But the big question remains, is this the start of a comeback? Like a No Man's Sky redemption arc, where patches transform the game over time.
Has the initial lukewarm reception meant too many players have already tried it, bounced off, and mentally written it off? Can it regain momentum?
It's tough, isn't it? First impressions matter so much.
They really do. Player patience isn't infinite. The quick patch is a positive sign of commitment from Remedy, absolutely. But overcoming that initial hurdle in such a crowded market, it's a huge challenge. We'll have to wait and see if these improvements are enough to build a lasting community.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, FBC, Firebreak.
Yep.
It's clearly not your typical Remedy game. It's not setting the streaming world on fire.
Definitely not. But it occupies this interesting space. A no-frills, team-focused co-op shooter without any microtransactions, which is genuinely refreshing. Makes it a really interesting case study, actually.
So the takeaway for you listening might be, it seems worth trying on Game Pass or PS Plus, especially if you have a couple of friends looking for something new in the co-op realm.
Yeah, manage your expectations. Know it might not have super deep long-term hooks, but for a teamwork-focused experience without extra costs, could be fun.
But thinking bigger picture, here's something to chew on. If a game like Firebreak, which has smart design ideas, crossplay, looks decent, and ditches microtransactions, still struggles to get significant long-term traction, what does that tell us?
What does it say about what players really expect now? Or maybe what the market demands? Is pure gameplay, even well-executed co-op gameplay, enough anymore in an era dominated by live services, constant content updates, and, well, watchability?
What actually makes a game stick in your library these days? Is it the core mechanics, the community, the constant updates, or something else entirely? Something
Yeah.
to think about.